Since everything looks good, I'm going to start the actual assembly. I'm going to seal the top two studs with Permatex Forma Gasket number 2. Even though I didn't break through the trenches, or when trenching, into the stud passages that I can see, I just want to be certain that I don't have any leaks there. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and put the other circlip on the piston, now that I know it isn't coming off. I'm just going to stuff some rags or paper towels here into the crankcase. That way the circlip shouldn't be able to fly into there if anything does happen. Now I'm about to coat the base gasket with a little bit of Permatex Ultra Gray before it goes on. Just a very, very thin coating. TPR does not mention to do any of this. They don't say to put any kind of coating on the gasket, but this is something I pretty much always do. And if you hear a bunch of noise, my apologies. Can't do a whole lot about it. There is a combine literally in my yard at the moment, so if you've ever heard me say I live in a cornfield, it's no BS. Next thing I'll be doing is putting the cylinder on, so I need to just make sure that this piston ring is aligned, so the gap is aligned with the locator, the pin that you see on the piston there. It should be kind of centered around it. My cylinder's already been cleaned, so I'm just gonna lube it up a little bit with some 2-stroke oil that I keep in this little squirt bottle. And I want to get it in the cylinder but not onto the deck or the base here. Now I can go ahead and slide the cylinder on. Just making sure that piston ring is aligned as I showed you. Now I need to get the 2-piece cylinder head and this collection of O-rings together and ready to go on to the cylinder. And I will say that Top Performance says they will tell you to install an O-ring and then lube it. I tend to do it the other way. I just take a little bit of grease and put a fine film on each O-ring. Try to get it very fine, just spread it around before I install it. And the first one I'm going to do is this right here in the spark plug area. And I'll just wipe this to make sure I don't have grease right on top there. And here comes that combine again. Now I've got 4 small O-rings to go right here. Now this is supposed to go into the outer section of the head. Just being careful not to lose all these O-rings. Takes a little bit of pressure just because of that big O-ring on the spark plug area there. I've got the combustion O-ring, the big one there. Same deal. And again, the 4 small O-rings for each stud. last but not least, a real big O-ring that goes in this outside area on the head here. Now hopefully I can get this entire assembly over the studs and onto the cylinder without any of this falling out. So I'm just going to try and watch that carefully. Alright, I'm going to just wipe the crud off of my studs here. I get a little bit of stuff on there with a base gasket and some grease. And while none of the scooter manufacturers actually specify it, I like to put a drop of some sort of lubricant on each of the studs before I install the nuts and then torque. That's pretty standard practice in automotive and such. I just use 2-stroke oil. Just try to put a drop or so, just enough to give it a little lube, make sure everything moves smoothly. Then I've got a brand new set of Naraku M7 by 1.0 cylinder nuts here. Put those on in a crisscross fashion, hand tight first. Try to keep some pressure on this thing just to make sure the O-rings don't go anywhere. Take a look around, just make sure that outside O-ring isn't sticking out or anything. Okay, I'm gonna kind of lightly begin to torque them with a small ratchet. I'm not trying to get anywhere near the torque spec, just start slowly inching that down, putting pressure gradually across there in a crisscross pattern. So now I'm just going to switch over to a torque wrench that is set to roughly 12.5 Newton meters because their spec is 12 plus or minus 1 Newton meter, and torque that down. Now for this hole, Top Performance supplies this, which basically would just be a drain plug that you can put in there, and they also supply this, which allows you to mount a coolant temperature sensor, and I want to use my coolant temperature sensor still, so I'm going to go with this. They also give you a washer to go under either one of those. Normally I would put liquid sealant on there. Unfortunately, apparently I ran out of that and I don't really feel like going to get some right now, so I'm just going to use some Teflon tape to seal those threads. I gave my coolant temp sensor the same treatment with Teflon tape, so now I can install that as well. Now I'm going to install what is their recommended plug, or as close as I could get to it, which is an NGK BR10EG. I'm going to cut off this crush washer here, because when I actually put this in the scooter, it will have a temp sensor under there. So I don't want that. And check the gap. Looks like 22 thousandths of an inch. I'm not exactly sure what the gap is supposed to be on this one, but I will check that to be certain before I actually get this running. The last thing I'll do to the cylinder right now is to install this seal that I use for pressure leak testing, because once I get the reeds installed and everything sealed up and given some cure time, that will be the next thing I do, is to check for leaks, make sure it holds pressure. Well, luckily while I was working on the cylinder, the replacement reeds came in, so I'm going to go ahead and try to replace this one that's damaged, and when I got a better look at this, the corner of that is starting to fray, so I'll probably replace both of those. Now I can start assembling all of these pieces and get this into the engine. And just like a lot of the other stuff, I'm going to coat my gaskets with some Permatex Ultra Gray. So everything should be sealed up now, and basically I just need to give this 24 hours for the RTV and such to cure, and then I can do a pressure test.